Alright guys, tonight we're going to learn about control in our knives. We went over the anatomy of our knives and the different types of blades, and tonight we're going to learn about control, and we've got a couple of things, a couple of exercises I want to show you that I've been using and have been using for years. Now, one thing that I've noticed is these techniques, if you use them correctly, there's still danger. It's not going to totally eliminate danger when it comes to using your knives. But the most dangerous time that I find now is when I'm putting my knife away. By using these techniques, you're going to be able to gain control of your cuts, and it might not be what you think. Now, I want to start off with what God says, because that's what we should all do. We should all start off with what God says. I've got it written down because my memory ain't worth a flip. It's in Proverbs 25 and 28. Proverbs 25 and 28. It says, "He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls." Now, what do walls do in a city? They create a security boundary, don't they? Mm-hmm. That is your defense. So what we're learning tonight, is creating a defense around us from accidents, mistakes. Now, we're not going to be perfect, but what we're going to do is we're going to bring, the minute you take your blade out of the sheath, you just upgraded your possibility of being cut by 100%, just by taking it out. Now, you might say, I'm the best thing since sliced bread when it comes to working with my knife. There are accidents that can happen. You could trip, just slip. We've all had accidents with a blade. These techniques are going to put the walls back up around that, and they're going to create a safety barrier around us, so we're less likely to slip when we're working with our knives. So, first of all, this is a lock blade knife. We discussed the anatomy, your weak points right there, right? Okay? So, when you're working with a lock blade knife, you've got a little bit more safety than you do if there wasn't a lock here, okay? But that does not mean it's 100% safe. These knives are not 100% safe. You have to be as safe as possible, okay? The knife necessarily does not mean you're automatically guaranteed that you're not going to cut yourself, okay? The better you are with your knife is going to lessen your chances of that. So every time you open a knife, whether it be a lock blade, a fixed blade, or your grandpa's uncle, your old case knife, or whatever it might be, just remember that safety is your number one. Remember, I told you that when we were talking last time, we talked about the blood circle. Remember that? The blood circle. Who is around me? This circle that I've got around me right here. That's my blood circle, that I don't hit anybody with this blade. We also talked about what else? You remember what else we talked about? The triangle of death. The triangle of death. These two arteries right here, yeah. If you're in the woods and you puncture one of those arteries, you're probably not coming out. That's just the cold hard facts of it. None of us can get to you quick enough. If you slice that artery just right, you're gone. So you got to be careful of where you are here and who you're around here, but you also need to be careful here. This is another one you have to be very careful with. You, yourself, how you're using this thing, all right? Now, there's a couple of techniques that we can practice with, but one thing I have discovered, if you watch how the chef in the kitchen uses his knife, you will learn techniques that he uses that you can use in the woods. Let me give you an example. Everybody has seen where a chef will pick up a knife and he just goes to town on some celery or whatever lettuce, and he looks like he's just a food processor, and you wonder, how in the world is this guy not taking his fingers off? How in the world? Number one, it's the movement that he's using. When you go from this to this, you've just minimized your chance of cutting yourself. Let me show you what they do. And I'm going to try to draw this out where everybody can see it. You got your fingers right here. Here's your knuckle. Here's the finger right here. Okay? There's your fingernail. Don't make fun of my art. So, here we go, right there. See that? All right, there's the finger. Where do you think that knife blade is?
Right on the knuckle.
Here's the celery right here. That knife blade is right there. Notice how far the tip of this finger is away from what he's chopping. That's how they do it. The way we think that he's chopping like this right here, with his finger stretched out. No, his finger is bent. So in other words, I've got the blade, and I've got my, it's hard to see, I've got my fingers. See how my fingers are curved in? Instead of being out?
Yeah.
They're in. And then when he makes the movement, he is totally away from his fingertips. See there? Totally away from his fingertips. We think this, actually what's going on is this. He's using his knuckles as a guide. Another thing you'll see, very short motions. Very short, controlled motions. It's not a big, huge coming in there and just whack, whack, whack. Little tiny motions, okay? When you go in with a razor blade, now you can't do that with a razor blade, can you? Because there's not enough room there. But there is a way to control that blade also. So now, you're down here, you're making your motions. What happens to this thumb? If you get up under here, what happens there? You got to remember.
You get a scar like this?
You get sitting there, all of a sudden your fingernail's sitting there and you're still chopping lettuce. You got to watch your thumb also. So what happens is as you're chopping, your thumb is pushing the item into the blade. You're guiding it with your fingers, and your blade is moving up and down. You've just made your hand and your knife a food processor, okay? There again, very short motions. The blade never goes above the knuckle, ever. It rests on the side, it doesn't go on top. So we think of somebody whittling on a stick. And I'm just going to use this pen as my knife. What do we think of? We think of this. This is how the guy's going to whittle on his stick. Number one, you need to be concentrated on what you're doing. And you're not coming up here. Ever. You do not come from up here. Why? Because the minute you go down, your thumbnail's probably going to be stuck to that stick.
Yeah.
The tip of your thumb's coming off. So here, what about this? What if I take the blade and I push it with my thumb? What about that? Would that be okay? Let's try that. I'm going to try this with a razor blade. Okay, this is a razor blade. I'm going to tuck this underneath. Boom. I've got it locked in. I've got it away from myself. My blood circle. Right? Nobody's in my blood circle. I'm taking a little tiny, notice my little tiny strokes. I'm not coming way up here. Little tiny strokes. I'll rotate it. Look, there is no reason why you should have to make a big whack with a razor blade. Just it's a knife that you use for small cuts, right? And remember, we went over last time, your different blades do different things. Remember that? Your different knives are going to be doing different things. In a chef's kit, when you see it in the store, they'll sell you 35 knives for $19.95. This is the ultimate chef's kit. You probably only going to use 3 of them out of that whole set, out of the whole thing. One of them, excuse me, you're going to use 90% of the time, and that's your big one. For the chopping that I just showed you, that's, you know, your chopper. Then you're going to use the fruit paring knife. You're going to use that one cutting off stems. And then you're going to have one that's got a serrated edge. If you've ever seen a bagel knife, that's kind of what it looks like. Those are the only 3 knives you're going to use. Now, there is nothing wrong with bringing a food preparation knife into camp with you. Not a thing in the world wrong with that. What law is written that says you can't? There is none. If you want to bring a paring knife into camp with you, or if you want to have a paring style knife in your bug out bag, in your rucksack for camping, by all means, do that. Because if you want to put a razor blade knife into your bag, by all means, do that. You want to multiply your chances of safety, and your safety on what you're working with is dependent on what you're going to pick up to work on it with, right?
Yeah.
This knife right here, big old thing. Am I going to do real fine work with that? Real minute? No, this is a chopper. It's what it's for. Now I can chop a sandwich just like I can chop a branch off a tree. But do I have to chop a branch off a tree? Can I put something else in my bag that will do my chopping for me and make it safer to do? Absolutely. So, what about this knife here? Could I process food with this knife, you think?
Yeah.
You think I could process food with that? Yep, absolutely. So what I've done is I've taken two different knives and I've put them together. And I've just upped my options of what I can do, haven't I? I can put two different grinds of blades on this. I can have this one for skinning animals, or this one for skinning animals, this one for chopping. So with my blade, my knife combination, what I'm going to do, I just up my chances. Now, if I go in and put one of these knives in there, I've just upped my chances of being able to do different things again. Now I can do real minute work, real small stuff, little carving, nothing big. I might not necessarily want to skin a deer with this. I could if I needed to, but do I want to? Okay, so, and then here is the Mora. Now the Mora, I like the Mora. I can process small sticks with this. I'm not going to go out and process branches the size of my arm. I know that. But this is good to have in the kit. You want to up your chances. You want to be tool heavy on certain things, okay? Now, control. Let's go back to control. I'm going to use the Mora. No, I'm going to use my neck knife. People make fun of me because I carry like 3 different knives. But you know what? I don't need one knife all day long. I need 3 knives all day long. I've got one that I might need to cut up. I need to cut open a box, and I don't want to dull my knife on a box. I'll go over and grab that razor blade right there because I got 100 of them in the shop, okay? And my other knife is my eating knife, is what I call it. That's my lock blade. I don't want it touching what that razor blade does. My other one is a multi-tool. I've got pliers and everything else on it. So I'm set up for whatever I run into. I have put that into my toolbox, so to speak. All right, so I got my neck knife here. It's a funny looking little blade, but you know what? It works. It's nothing that Rambo would be proud of, but it works. Okay, so I'm gonna pick up this right here. Now let's say I'm gonna make a movement this way. How many times have you seen somebody doing this number? They're going away from them. Now, it's outside the circle, okay? But listen, control don't always look cool. All right? And we ain't after looking cool. We're after control. So, I'm gonna bring this into here. Short little strokes. Away from me. Look how I'm moving. That's real short little strokes. I'm shaving that off. I'm not going fast. I'm watching what I'm doing, turning it. Am I getting a pretty good shave off of that with that knife? I'm not slapping it all around. Now, the blade is toward me. That's one of the more dangerous cuts, I would say. But what about if I were to come down here and I needed to cut hardcore? I mean, I needed to cut into this thing. Then what I'm going to do is I want to make my knife stationary. Bernard, can you come up and do the camera, because I got to get down on the ground just a minute. I'm going to just use my bigger knife as an example. Outside of my circle. I want to make sure everybody's outside of my circle. I'm outside of what else? What else am I outside of? My triangle of death. I've got this. I'm going to take this right here. Look what I'm doing. Look at that. My knife is stationary. My thing that I'm cutting is moving. Can I slip with this knife?
No. Not too much.
Not too much. If I lose my grip, maybe. But I'm not going to swing wide, am I? I'm right there. I am literally within 1 foot of my work area. So, just like your blood circle, you minimize your work area to within a couple inches or a foot. That way, you're not going to slip and cut somebody next to you. All right? Now, Romans 5:8 says this, but God commanded his love toward us. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. What does that mean? That means God has control over his love the way you should have control over your tools, your knife, things like that. Notice, I'll read it again. It says, but God commanded his love toward us. That means he has control over his own love, doesn't it? It is something that he commanded toward every one of us. When you are doing anything with your knife, you are commanding that tool for a purpose. And you're commanding that tool to do a certain thing. You are in control of that knife, or should be. The moment you take your eyes off of what you're doing is when you get sloppy. God never takes his eyes off of us. Once he commanded his love toward us, his eyes have been on us ever since. He never took his eyes off of what he is doing. So, you are to never, if some Billy Bob comes up over here, hey man, you got to stop what you're doing, put the knife away, and then address whoever it is you need to address, or do whatever it is you need to do. So many times we want to lay our knives down, walk off, forget totally about that knife. Somebody comes along with flip-flops, and guess what? We're on the way to the emergency room. It's a mistake. It's just something that happens. But we have to be in control of our tools at all times. Remember the samurai? He always drew that weapon, and it had something on it when he put it back. He didn't draw that weapon until he was ready to use it. You never take your knife out of the sheath unless there is a reason. I don't care if it's cutting a sandwich or cutting a branch. You're sitting there playing with a knife, you just up your chances 100% that you're going to the hospital. I know. I was 8 years old when I almost cut my finger off the first time. So, I get it. Knives are awesome and knives are cool, but there's times to work with those, not play with them, work with them. They're tools, okay? So, Philippians 4:8. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are good report, if there be any virtue, if these be any praise, think on these things. What's that got to do with control? Absolutely everything. I'm in Walmart, and the dude in front of me is ticking me off really bad. I need to have control. This right here is the most deadliest thing in the world right now, is the human mind. And there are a lot of people are losing that right now. They don't have this anymore. Why don't they have this anymore? I believe it's because the Holy Ghost is withdrawn from some of these people, and they don't have this anymore. They've been given over to a reprobate mind. Okay? What's in here will get you out of almost any situation. What's in here has to be controlled at all times. And God says, think on things that are lovely. Think on these things. Don't think of what's on television. Don't pay attention to what the world is telling you. Think of the things that I have set forth for you to think of. In other words, keep your blood circle in mind. Make sure that your triangle of death is respected. Make sure that you're making short, steady, deliberate actions. There's a part in the Bible that says, grab a hold of no man quickly. You know what that means?
Just that.
Just that. It's plain and simple. It's like lettuce. There ain't nothing to it. It's just that. Don't be jumping around. Oh, you can cut me off and I'm going to pull you. I'm going to roll down my... No. Grab a hold of no man quickly. That man might have a dying daughter in the hospital, and he ain't thinking about cutting you off in line. You know, see, and when we think things out, slow, steady, almost a monotonous, but we're paying attention. not in such a way that we're mindless, but mindful of what we are doing. Then we will get through what we're cutting, what we're chopping, whatever we're doing, and we'll come out the other end of it. And thank God that we have a book that teaches us how to be mindful of things. It's called the Holy Bible. And we can sit and we can listen to what God tells us about these things. And we also have teachers that go out in the woods and they can teach us how to use our knives and how to work with these things. And we can pay attention to them also. But those little motions, go online, go on YouTube, find some safety. I would suggest look up what your chefs are teaching. It was awesome. When I was studying for this talk, I went on and I was looking at videos of chefs and how they teach their students how to use their knife. And I was like, wow, you could implement that in the woods and it would be the same thing. Short, protective movements. Now we all want to be like slash, slash. There's a time for that. There's a reason for that. But we're not chopping through a jungle. We're just going out making tinder, making kindling. We're going out processing donuts, okay? So, I mean, that's the main gist of it. We want to all be able to come back with all these still attached to us at the end of camp, okay? So, what we'll do is, next week, we're going to actually take, after you've done some investigating on your own and some learning, we're going to take our knives and we're going to show each other what we learned. The safe way. We're going to actually put it to practice, okay? You got your knife on you? Come on up here just a minute. Y'all remember y'all's first knife?
Yep.
He got a loner knife. What kind of knife you got?
Swiss Army knife.
A Swiss Army knife?
There you go.
Where's the blade on it?
There's a bunch of them.
There's a bunch of them? All right, how do you hold that blade? There you go. That's the handshake grip. That is one of the most powerful grips, okay, that you got. All right. Now here's another one. Remember what we was doing? We was cutting. Okay. Take your stick. Take your stick. Tuck it up under that arm. You got good control. Now you're gonna take it. See right there. You're going away from you, right? Little short motions, little tiny short motions. When you're coming this way, the blade's towards you, you're coming in. Feel that thing dig in? Did you feel that? All right. Now, do you know how to close this knife? I'm going to show you. Hand open. Just like that. Let's see you do it. Let's get your stick. Now open that knife up for me. A little hard, ain't it? You got a bum thumb. Let's see. There you go. All right, how you close that knife? See what you did? You did this. See that? What he did?
Got his fist on it.
You know how many times I've done that? Or this. Look at that.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to that blade? Oop. Just like that. When you close your knife, keep those fingers from here. See that? That's where knife safety starts, is taking one little movement at a time and memorizing it, okay? Now, let's see you open that knife. Let me open it for you because you got your bum thumb. Now, let's see you close that knife. There you go. Can you get your fingers in that knife if they're out here? Nope. If you get that blade over top of here, it's going to cut that finger, right? All right, you can go back and sit down.
Good job, man.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so we got our knives. The next one we're going to be doing is sharpening. So who brought in the sharpening stone?
He did.
Okay, and I'm going to the Smurf stuff. Get that, and we're going to hopefully see if we can get some leather. If you guys got any old belts or anything, see if you can bring them in. You're going to make some strops. put a blade on your knife and you strop it from then on out. You don't put blades on it over and over again. You strop it one time, put the blade on it once, strop it from there on out. Okay, you keep a nice edge on that thing, and also pay attention to what edge you have on your knife. You don't want to be chopping down trees if you got a convex, right? So what we're going to get into next is sharpening our knives. And then when we get into sharpening knives, we're going to touch a little bit on axes and a little bit on saws. Now, axes is a big thing, but it's really, I mean, when I was in Boy Scouts, we went through axes in one night and we got it. I mean, it's not a complicated thing, really. It's just a lot of memorizing the safety on that. But there is some safety, and with saws. And then after that, we'll get into fire and how to make fire and the tools we need to make fire with. That's going to be a good one. We'll probably have a lot more to do with that one. Okay, Bernard, we want to wrap it up. All right. If we want to pledge allegiance before we wrap it up. You got to pledge allegiance?
I do it all the time.
All right. Start us off.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. That was a good meeting.